Today we're joined by Washington Samukange. Washington Samukange is a Zimbabwean scientist. He was, for a long time, for 10 years actually, was involved with the Ministry of Health and Childcare here in Zimbabwe. He was based at the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe, and there he was the microbiologist and the regulatory scientist there. And then now he moved to Germany, and in Germany, he is the scientific officer for an institute within the Federal Ministry of Health there in Germany. Samukange, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Nabo.
Right. Your experience within the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe, and more particularly where you're working now in the Federal Ministry of Health in Germany, has gotten you to work a lot and very closely with Nyadzima vaccines, Nyadzi vaccination, and how that whole process works. COVID-19 has come, and around COVID-19 has been a lot of conspiracy. One of the biggest conspiracies is around the vaccine that may be created. There are so many conspiracies around this vaccine. Some of the conspiracies are centering around a personality, Bill Gates. We'll talk about that. But what I wanted us to understand first, too much into the conspiracies, into Nyadze 5G, into Nyadze mark of the beast, and all sorts of things that are going around. So, what is a vaccine?
Okay, thanks, Napoleon. So, a vaccine is, in general, it's a biological preparation that allows us as humans to be able to acquire active immunity against infectious diseases. So, it's a medicine which is given to healthy people. So, a vaccine can be given as a preventive measure or as a therapeutic measure. So it's used for active treatment or for prevention of a potential future disease. And how it works is it gives the body, human body, the ability to be able to acquire immunity, active immunity against infectious diseases. So that's the summary is what a vaccine is. So
okay. And then mugataura layman's terms. Vazhinji vanoti a vaccine is when vanhu vanotora kanzi imimi madhokotera munotora chirwere handiti vhairasi yacho moiisa mumunhu handiti mondiinjekta inini nevhairasi yacho kuti ndidzidzire kufaita vhairasi yacho saka munenge muri kundipa chirwere ndizve.
That's a very good question. So zvatinoita panogadzirwa vaccine. So hatidati vaccine, no, it's used against infectious diseases. So infectious diseases zvirwere zvinokonzereswa neutachiona. So utachiona zvinogona kuti bacteria kana maviruses. So maviruses aya ndo anokonzeresa infectious diseases. Saka zvinoitwa manje mascientists tinotora either bacteria kana kuti virus, but hatitore bacteria inoita kuti urware. Tinotora a part of the bacteria kana kuti virus. Let me use example yemaviruses. So pamaviruses handiti tinoziva kune polio, polio ndo mhetamakumbo, kune measles, gwirikwiti. Saka zvirwere izvozvo tinotora utachiona unozvikonzeresa, then kana matora utachiona unozvikonzeresa izvozvo tinoenda pane totora virus, then toita process inonzi attenuation of the virus kana kuti weakening of the virus. Saka process yeattenuation iyi kutora a part yevirus, but kwete virus rachona, but a part of the virus, and then that part iyoyoyo toigadzira kuti tione kuti inogona here kukonzeresa kuita kuti munhu ave an immune reaction. So anogona body yako iri kuproduce here immunity against this part. Kana tikaona ichigona kuzviita izvozvo, then part iyoyo ndoyata kushandisa kumanufacture vaccine against that particular disease. So it's not accurate hachisi chokwadi kuti izvona tiri kutora virus tokubaya virus tiri kutora chino pachirungu vanoti virus like particle or attenuated virus, which is not exactly the same virus inokonzeresa chirwere. So iroro ndo rinogadzirisa vaccine, and then ndo rinozoita kuti chi muviri wedu ugone kuresponda the right immunity to the pathogen.
Okay, all right. In terms of, I'm sure because you work with vaccines, you are following all the developments around the world in terms of development of a vaccine for COVID-19. I'm sure Germany is actively involved in that research and that science. Is that how close are we to developing that vaccine? And Zrugu Famba?
Yeah, Zrugu Famba. I can say my candidates, Emma vaccines are equal anopora 10. They're roughly, I think, the last I checked, there were some 16 candidate vaccines that are in the pipeline. In fact, I should say this now. Kudara, kugadzira vaccine would take at least 10 years before you could get a vaccine. But
10 years.
10 years, at least 10 years before you get a vaccine. But nekuti zvirwere zvemaviruses zvakuita zvichitiwedzerei globally. What has happened now is tane technologies ekuti tinogona kubva from start to finish in having a vaccine in at least 12 months. So ikozvozvi takona kuti in 1 year tinogona kuva ne-vaccine from the start to the finish. In fact, in the future, it could even be possible to get a potential vaccine in about at least 6 months. Chirikuita kuti tigone kudaro ndechekuti ndombopinza Biologist mbichara. Zvirikuitika ndezvokuti globally, because my governments akanotisa what is happening with my infectious diseases. So pakugadzirwa anonzi ma-platforms ema-vaccines. Kana ndichiti platform, nokuti izvo tikugadzira a shell yekuti togona kugadzira different types of vaccines tichishandisa a basic shell. So kuti, for instance, measles vaccine is a life attenuated vaccine. Saka magadziriro anoitwa measles toatarisa waya tokati right, chatiringoda chiri missing is just the virus part, or virus particle from the measles virus, chinoda kuti tigone kuva an active vaccine. Saka now tobva tabvisa ichocho, the virus like particle for measles, and then tochiti we can put any other virus like particle for any other virus which is causing my infection. So that's what's going on now at the moment. Saka panema several platforms are available. Togona kungotsvaga virus part yedu inogona kuita kuunza immune response in any normal human being. So with vaccines for COVID, we are actually less than 12 months away from having the first vaccine.
But 12 months dzakatowanda kamukuru wangu. Kureva kuti mawana atinawo aya anogona kustretcha until next year.
Chances are tinosvika next year tisati tane vaccine, but I'm sure 12 months andokureva idzidzi ndedzekuti from January pakatanga kuita when this problem started to escalate. So by December, at least from September onwards, we should be having a vaccine, vaccine candidates on the ground. In fact, what's happening now is this coming June, July, August, there are several trials that will be kickstarting. A lot of these vaccines at the moment are in what they call the pre-exploratory phases or stages, which are just developmental stages. And what they are doing is, in the scientific world, we call it preclinical development, preclinical stages, which is just a lot of animal testing to see whether the product is safe, to see whether it can actually elicit immune response. So this is what's going on. But in fact, actually, I think one candidate vaccine has already started. They're already now recruiting for volunteers for the clinical trial.
Testing. Mm-hmm.
Testing, first in human trials. But a lot of them will be happening in July, in May, going onwards. So we'll be having a lot of first in human trials for those vaccines, which will be.
Kunyaya kuti matrials arifana kuitirwa kuAfrica. I know I'm going to apologize. WHO ikati no, that was racist. It's not right. But what's the reason into that?
There's a lot of misconceptions that go on there. So the development process for vaccines, for medicines, is before a medicine can actually, the first time in a shop or is available for people to use it, it undergoes this clinical testing. So my phases, you've got the preclinical phases. So this is for vaccines. So preclinical phases, then you've got the clinical phase. Then after the clinical phase, you've got the regulatory approval stages, and then you have the manufacturing and quality control. So now when the product is now available and people can use it. So in that phase, we are moving from the preclinical phase to the clinical phase, which is the testing. So testing there's going to be phase 1 clinical trials, phase 2 clinical trials, phase 3 clinical trials, and then there will be regulatory approvals. Then there will be phase 4, which is the last stage, and then the product is fully authorized globally. So now what's happening with this vaccine development for COVID? Right now, there's the approval for the clinical trials, and the clinical trial phase, it's not just done. Aingonzi munhu anongomuka ngoti right ndada kutobaya vanhu vaccine kuti ndione kuti kushanda here. Pane ma-approvals anoitika, and there are regulators vanoona izvozvo. So what happens before a clinical trial can take place in any country, including African countries, including Zimbabwe? Whoever is sponsoring that clinical trial needs approval from the relevant authorities. These authorities include Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe. They include the Medical Research Council of Zimbabwe. It also includes other players like institutional review boards for the institutions where you are doing the trial where. So there are many approvals that are required before you can just start injecting people with the vaccine. And so one of the things that actually happens is that Africa is well known for the fact that recruiting volunteers is difficult in Africa. People in Africa, we generally do not just trust people sticking needles in.
Yeah, but I guess what volunteering, I was volunteering, but they put a big, Okay, so here's how the conspiracies are being put forward. Bill Gates has got an agenda to wipe out a fraction of his money. Yeah. And his agenda has been working or will work through vaccines. Unobaiwa vaccine uchinzi wapona, and then maybe unokuita kafira mberi vaccine yacho. It's something that will then affect you later, or unokonzera cancer, or whatever it is. So let's deal with the 5G issue later. Bill Gates, how plausible is it that could happen? Vaccine either for Africa or around the world, and it's got that element here.
So let me speak for Zimbabwe. One of the tasks that I used to do in my old position in Zimbabwe at the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe was to do what's called batch release approval for vaccines. So what this batch release entails is each vaccine batch that is used in the mass immunization campaigns, it would come to MCAZ first, and then MCAZ checks So the check that we will do is to just see whether the product was manufactured correctly, whether it actually has what it says it has inside it. So there are ways that we can do this even without doing the actual testing. So we'll do this batch release checks. And then once we are convinced that everything is okay, then the product can be used in Zimbabwe. But one of the other things that would also happen before we allow the vaccine to be used in Zimbabwe is that in the country that it is coming from, it also needs to have had regulatory approvals, which meet the requirements of our expectations also in Zimbabwe. So I'm not so sure how this particle could be put in, this chip or whatever it is, could be put in, and fellow regulatory professionals would just look the other way when they see it. What I do know is that
Anzani Maria Sekapuki is the richest man on the planet. He can pay everyone to look the other way.
Of course, I understand the conspiracy theories, and I understand the fears that people have. But I think this is one of those times where I would call on Zimbabweans to trust the professionals, to trust the sons and daughters that are professionals, Zimbabwean professionals, who are also working, because all of us, these products are going to be used on our children, they're going to be used on our relatives, our fathers, our mothers, our aunts. So these are people who are dear to us, and I don't know anyone of the current crop of regulators who are working in Zimbabwe who would look to the other side just because people are big in a Bill Gates. I don't see this happening. I trust the professionals that work in Zimbabwean government agencies. They've got very high standards. In fact, our institutions are highly regarded. It's not just something that we tell ourselves so that we make ourselves happy, but it's indeed true that Zimbabwean institutions are highly regarded globally. Even right now, the guys that are doing COVID testing, those guys are really good. The National Microbiology Reference Laboratories, they are very professionals of their high order. So for me, I think I'm convinced that they will do the right thing. I'm also convinced from a professional perspective that I don't see how someone could tamper with a vaccine so that they put a chip instead of a therapeutic, finding a way of actually stimulating immunity or immune responses in people
Okay.
that are vaccinated. Yeah.
Okay. Mavaccine atinoshandisa muZimbabwe anombobva kupi? Anogadzirwa nani?
That's a good question, actually, because the vaccines anoshandiswa kuZimbabwe right now, the majority of them are coming from places like India. You also have some that are coming from Europe. But what people should know is that most of the vaccines that are used in Zimbabwe are procured and are brought into the country through the Global Alliance for Vaccines, which is Gavi, and Gavi is funded by Bill Gates. So if he had an agenda to wipe out people, he's been bringing vaccines into countries like Zimbabwe for the last maybe 15 years or so. They come in through UNICEF. So the vaccination program in Zimbabwe is supported to a large extent by the Global Alliance for Vaccines, Gavi, which is funded by Bill Gates. So he's already been coordinating.
Okay.
So to an extent, we should be grateful because for me, firsthand, I saw the devastating effects of measles when we had an outbreak in 2008, 2009. And we received vaccines that came from, they were funded by Gavi, but they came from India. So I am grateful because a lot of children died during that outbreak. So I don't know whether that was this conspiracy to let children in Zimbabwe die.
Yeah. Okay. Um, but still, Chimbutaura Ipapapo, vaccines somehow, and it seems the voice is getting louder and louder. There seems to be a rising voice against vaccines. I know you're a professional, you're a medical professional, you've been involved in the issue of vaccines for the last 10 years or so. Actually going on 14, if not going on 15 years now, that you've been working in this area. She that my vaccines I such bad reputation. They're actually not good for you. Hans Bill Gates akaramba kuvaccinate ana ake, and these are kutumira vaccines to Africa. All those issues around it. There's no smoke without fire.
Yeah.
What are the disadvantages or the I'm going to pros and cons. What are the cons of having vaccines or being vaccinated?
Okay, so vaccines just happen to be that medicine which is mostly used on healthy human beings. So you don't have to be sick to be vaccinated. So now that is for us, I guess, in concept wise, you need to be sick first before you get a medicine, right? So you have to have a headache for you to take a painkiller. You don't take a painkiller to prevent a headache. So vaccines are used on healthy individuals. That's a big negative for them. Was why do I need to take it? But they also have the unfortunate thing that they are victims of their own success. So what I mean by that is that they have been so successful that the world over, everyone has forgotten about the devastating effects of these infectious diseases before vaccines came. So for us, coming from Africa, when we grew up, we used to see vanhu vainzi metamakumbo, who are affected by polio. You would know uyu akafectwa nepolio uyu polio. So now what it meant is for my parents and our guardians, they had to make sure that you were vaccinated so that you wouldn't get polio. Because you see it. When you see something, you know this thing is deadly. So you take precautions.
Mm-hmm.
But now, as the world has progressed, as the times has progressed, we don't see these diseases anymore. And now because we don't see those diseases anymore, that's the first thing. And then now you have to take this thing for a disease that you are not seeing, one, and also for injecting it into healthy people. The question now comes, why should we do it? Because the disease is not there. We are not affected by the disease. We are also not affected by the only thing that we see is that some people, when they get vaccinated, they get sick. So yes, of course, there are people who are going to get sick from being vaccinated. But the majority of people do not get sick. So this is where the challenge is, trying to balance vaccination and also the diseases. So the example I like using is in the early mid-2000s, when HIV was a big problem in Zimbabwe, for instance. If there was going to be a vaccine against HIV at that time, a lot of people were going to rush and get that vaccine.
Yeah.
The reason is because we see HIV, so
we see the devastation.
We see the devastation. So it's difficult when you're not seeing the devastation for you to justify having the treatment. Why should you get this when you're not seeing the disease? So that's where the challenge is with vaccines. And then, of course, there are also people who make money from misinformation. So that, unfortunately, we cannot run away from. Misinformation. So there are people who are driving nice cars today because they spread lies on social media. There are people who have nice houses because they're spreading lies on social media. So that's something it drives those people. So of course they have to find an agenda or a topic for them to make money from it. So this is what happens with vaccines. But in general, if you're an African and you stay close, it doesn't matter if for you are living in Harare and you stay in a nice house, and then you choose that you are not going to get vaccinated or get your children vaccinated. Because the minute your children interact with other kids from poor backgrounds or from a different part of the world who have not been vaccinated, they stand a chance to actually get the disease. So you find, like right today, Germany actually has, in fact, Europe, the whole of Europe has, since I've been here, since 2017, 2016, they've been having a measles outbreak annually. And this is the same reason. Why would they get a measles outbreak for something that they thought they'd eradicated? The simple reason is people were choosing not to vaccinate their children against measles. And so today, measles is a big issue. It's a health problem in Germany. It's a health problem in advanced European countries. And little Zimbabwe is coming to, is dealing well with measles. We haven't had a measles outbreak in the last, let's say, 5-6 years. So this is the challenge with vaccines, that I think they're largely a victim of their own success. Of course, the other thing that I agree with people is that when we grew up, there were few vaccinations. So we had much less. We knew 6 childhood killer diseases. That's what we knew. But today, there is a cocktail of 12, 15 vaccines that are now there. What is just happening is that, like today, last year, coronavirus was not an issue. This SARS-CoV-2 was not an issue. But what is happening is there are more and more viruses that are moving from infecting animals only to affecting human beings, and then they do the human-to-human transmission. So this is something that happens. We don't know why it's happening more now, but it's happening. So if you go back the last 8 years, every 2 years we have a new viral disease, which kind of gives big outbreaks. So we're seeing this more and more, and we're trying to figure out why now and what we can do to try and prevent this from happening. But it is happening, and we have to deal with it. And as long as it keeps happening, we're going to be adding to the number of vaccines that are already in the pipeline. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to be vaccinated. The vaccination, ideally at the moment, even here in Germany, is given to the high-risk groups. So not everyone is going to be vaccinated for coronavirus, but it's going to be the people who belong to the high-risk category groups are the only ones who will be vaccinated. And also, if someone is not traveling to the area where this problem is, then they are not going to be vaccinated against this. Yeah, that's all I can say about vaccines for now.
Thank you very much, Washington Samukange. Washington Samukange, for those that don't know him, he is involved with the Federal Ministry of Health in Germany. He works for one of the institutions within that ministry. And then while he was in Zimbabwe, he was with the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe. He was a microbiologist there and a regulatory scientist. But today he was talking to us about vaccinations and vaccines and all the conspiracies around vaccines.